Hi, welcome to Moving to a New Place, a podcast on race, faith, and all things in between. My name is Dalton Holloway. Also on the podcast, Mike Lennon, huge science fiction fan. In this episode, Mike and I talk about social media, the ways it helps and the way it harms people to understand the realities of racial injustice.
All right, Dalton.
Yes.
I want to ask you a question about social media because we're coming to this issue in 2020, and one of the main ways this interaction is happening on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I want to know your opinion. Not just whether it's good or bad, but it's a tool. It's a way for people to talk to each other or to get thoughts out. What are you loving about it? And then the follow-up question. So what's it great for? What is this tool amazingly suited for? And then I want to ask you the follow-up question, which is always, what are the pitfalls of the tool, the limitations? Because all of them are mediums, whether it's, writing old-fashioned letters or whatever it is. It's just a way for people to talk. And when it comes to wrestling with issues like this, there's also some things that don't work for it. So start off with what you're loving about it.
I'm really loving the awareness. Social media runs a lot faster than the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news. So I can get information quickly. That's one thing I enjoy about it. Mm-hmm. I also enjoy that it's not being filtered through a voice. So I like watching basketball. You also are a basketball fan. When you watch it on TSN or watch it on The Score, some guy's talking to you about what's going on. They're not letting you watch it and take from it, right? So when I go watch the Toronto Raptors game, I'm seeing on the ACC, I'm watching what's going on here. I'm not hearing Leo Routins talk about so-and-so had 4 for 6 on the three-point line. What's going to happen in a second? I get the information unfiltered.
Yeah.
If there's a video and it's a raw video, I'm taking the raw video in, and I get to make the assumptions. I get to decide what I'm seeing without someone else tainting my view. I'm also really enjoying, I like seeing people interact with what's going on in the now. Because sometimes I'll miss something. And say on Instagram, for example, someone catches something that happened. I didn't know what happened. A conversation, a move. So, some of the things like changes within, say, law enforcement, for example, some people doing some demonstrations, peaceful ones, the response from politicians, whatever. I'm catching all that stuff that I would have missed otherwise. And again, I cannot assume that any news station organization is going to be able to catch everything because they have a limited amount of time to talk about whatever they want to talk about. With social media, everything's there. I try my best to get a full breadth of the spectrum. So I try, because even with regard to social media, for example, I'm thinking Twitter specifically in this point. So every news organization might have a Twitter account. Some left-leaning organizations have Twitter accounts, some centrist, some right. I like to take it all in because I personally believe that there's an ounce of truth in all of it. I just have to find it. I do also like, in some contexts, not all of them, again, I'm thinking of Twitter specifically, the conversations that do sometimes arise after the fact, right? Someone will post a comment, maybe a verified source, and sometimes people do bring in counter arguments in a positive way, not all caps or yelling. That still also helps me make an understanding of what's going on within.
Yeah.
And again, social media is one of those things, it all depends on what the medium is, right? So you have your Twitter, your Facebook, your YouTube. I definitely do enjoy watching some things live on YouTube as well now. Sometimes news organizations will go live with their stories, and sometimes they'll come in on something that, again, other news outlets, they just don't have the bandwidth or they don't catch it. So I can take in a lot from very pinpointed locales and get an understanding of what's going on in those communities.
It's almost like you can be right on the street,
right there.
Ferguson, when it was, and there's people down there responding to and describing what they're seeing and stuff.
Right there.
Yeah.
The things I'm not liking about social media, it's kind of, I just mentioned it too. People are speaking to respond and not to understand. Unless the person who has the account is explicit about what it's for, like if there's no rules put on a certain account, it just kind of turns into like a free-for-all. So someone says something that's, say, on the left side, someone on the right just says, you're wrong for this reason. And then it kind of becomes your mother or your mom. It just becomes one of those like back and forth
like
things, right? It becomes
interesting,
personal.
really
It's like,
quick.
who are you? I don't even know who you are. Why are you taking this so personal? So a lot of people seem to be putting a lot of weight and a lot of emotion into things. And sometimes they're not even going after the point. It's sometimes what I've seen, at least, is that they'll go after the person and not necessarily even about the point. So I think that's the biggest thing that I see when it comes to social media, when it comes to negatives. If something else comes up, I'll totally drop it in there. But that's what I'm seeing. What about you? Start with the positives, please.
The positives, it's funny what you like. Some of those things I like. I think one thing I like is the hybrid because I guess I'm older, so I'm used to, news the old-fashioned way kind of thing,
So what does that even mean? Like the
But
article?
Yeah, so like a lot of writers who write for mainstream media also obviously I would say they're being steered a little bit by social media. Like
sure.
they're getting into all kinds of Twitter feuds and wars and that kind of thing themselves. But they will forward often either articles they've read or others have read, so that I'm reading people's tweets, but they're forwarding a news story or a video or an article that's worth some thought, So that stuff, I like the hybrid of it, but I also do like some of the raw, things. It kind of helps me feel like what people are feeling. The only thing is that, as one person on Twitter often says, he's an academic in Texas, but he says, every now and then he puts in all caps, remember, Twitter is not real life. Like it's not representative of all people.
Yeah.
It's representative only of those who use Twitter.
Right.
So it's like the feeling of like, oh, they're all ganging up on me, but it's like really, it's just the people on Twitter, or it's just a group of people on Twitter. So I like the hybrid though. I've found like I don't buy the newspaper anymore. Even the Ottawa Citizen's so thin now. It's got so few things in it. I find my news often, especially my editorials, I would find them someone referring to, something on Twitter. Sometimes on Facebook. I don't tend to take the news on Facebook, but if there's news that pops up, sometimes I'll go check the item somewhere else. The thing, and so I really like it for that. Like I don't want to say those are just small things. I really like it.
They're big.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's almost like I can choose who's curating, right? I can choose someone who writes from the left perspective, and someone who chooses from the right, and someone that I share a theological, core convictions of, but then people that I don't, and they do the work of helping me understand things at least from their perspectives, and then I can pick and choose, and I do like that. I've never had that before. It was a longer work of, buying the Globe and Mail and the National Post, and,
right.
Whatever you had to, do all that. What I don't like is the same things you don't like. I feel like it's like a mob. It's like if you've ever seen the movies like Frankenstein's monster, and so like the mob that comes out with pitchforks, and like they've all decided, Frankenstein is bad, because of whatever this misunderstanding or that misunderstanding, and now they're all marching on the castle because one's told the other, and now they're all angry,
Yeah.
even if they don't know why they're there or whatever. And or Beauty and the Beast maybe is an example people know better. You know, the Beast has a reputation, and you know, it gathers up the town, and they're all going to come and do something terrible to the Beast, kind of thing. And the danger of mob mentality is one of the hallmarks of this whole democratic liberal democracy type experiment, where we're going to try and figure things out through rational dialogue and discourse. And instead of doing that, if you go back, I feel like social media is like taking a step back into the mob mentality, where it's like crowds of people demanding the head of somebody. And it's like, wait a second, you know, some of the processes that help us find out whether somebody's has an argument to make, or we need to hear their point of view. It hasn't happened yet. It's like, you know, all I need is this amount of information, and I already know what we all need to do.
Yeah.
We need to destroy this person, or we need to destroy their business, or we need to destroy this church, or we need to destroy this community organization.
One thing about social media too that I find interesting is that for some people, like, that's social media is the end. Like, that's where it stops. So, great example, on Instagram, sometimes post stories, and there have been a few cases that have been kind of in the news, and George Floyd is one of them, obviously, from, you know, the summer. But I'd see posts about things. So for a long time, all you'd see is about one certain thing. So I'll just take George Floyd, for example. It's there. Then all of a sudden it tapers off a little bit. And, you know, people move on. And then someone will post and say, just because George Floyd's off of your timeline or Twitter feed doesn't mean that justice hasn't been done. And, like, I get what they're trying to say.
The implication is that justice is being done by it constantly
being on Twitter or being on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think for some people that's where it ends, right? Like, if I don't see it on social media, then it's no longer a thing. Like, the fear for some people is that if people no longer engage with that topic, the topic's going to die.
Yeah.
And that's a really big danger for a couple of reasons, right? Because now people think that's the end, and that when justice happens, it'll only happen if it happens in this forum, right?
Yeah.
In the social media sphere. And I'm like, this isn't an end. It's kind of like your professor friend who was like, you know, this is not real life. It's an awareness place. It's a place of awareness, again, which I'm really glad for. But just because you don't see it as much anymore, it doesn't mean that people don't care about it anymore.
Right.
Also, it does become a place of popularity, right? When things get hot or trend, everyone's talking about it, right? So I see it, like, on Instagram, I see it on Twitter, but a piece of me is like, are you in here just for the trend of it because you don't want to look like you stick out like a sore thumb because you don't talk about it?
Yeah.
Or is it something that because you actually do care about? So it does end up being this kind of like, look at what I've done, like, puff up my chest. I've given out a couple of, you know, tweets or a couple of stories about this, so I'm safe.
Yeah.
You know, so it creates this, it's like a false world in a way.
Yeah.
That whole social media side of things. It can create that. in
The
people.
aspect of virtue signaling to me is especially, I don't think it might be my personality, maybe my upbringing, but that's a part of the social media that I find really tough.
Talk about it, just in case people don't know what you're talking about.
So the idea that I better say the right thing so everybody knows I'm a really virtuous person, so I'm going to come out and make a statement. It's almost like we're all organizations, and we have to send out our PR person. So, have you ever seen the movie with Eddie Murphy called Dave? You ever seen that? Oh, man. It's a terrible movie, but it's so funny. It comes. It's an alien spacecraft in the shape of a human.
Okay, that sounds terrible. Just off the beginning.
and there's all these little aliens inside of him that are driving him, and like a machine. So the machines, there's actually, like, you know, 1,000 people inside of him trying to make him work and try to figure out how to be human on the planet Earth. So, anyways, the character Eddie Murphy plays, Dave, is the, you know, robotic alien walking around New York. And it's like Twitter's like the person inside of us that's like the PR person, and we're working that part of our personality. I better get out front of this. I better tell everybody what I think, and I want people to think well of me, and so this statement will take care of it. And it means it's almost like, okay, now we know you're good. Even though all you've done is written a few words, it doesn't mean you're involved in racial reconciliation or you're doing things to help those who are marginalized or anything like that.
And you
all
would
of that's
think-
behind.
and you
All
would-
the stuff that matters isn't even there.
That's what I was going to say. You would think that the real time to celebrate would be those moments when they are out doing those reconciliatory things instead of it being the
Yeah.
I said the right thing. So even that in itself too, I think about some celebrities, not a lot. Like there have been a few celebrities who've sort of come out and said this and that. And again, maybe it's just because I'm the same way when it comes to things you don't talk about out loud. You know, like you don't go out there and say, "Oh, I gave $500,000 to
exactly
the SCLC," and it's like, well, that's great. But in my eyes, I'm like, just stop boasting yourself
Yeah.
up is what I say. But again, my brain and my context and thinking might be different. Someone else might see that and say, "Oh, that's great because so and so gave." Maybe that's the end in itself. But then at the same time, my marketing brain comes out and says, anything you put out there, like it helps the brand a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So in this whole, so it's a messy thing. But social media also, there is a good that I've seen too, is that it does create conversations that I've had on social media through Facebook, through Instagram, where people, one of my buddies, he did a seminar with Caribbean women from the University of Windsor, just talking about their experiences in healthcare and this and that. And it's like people have come together.
See, I love when somebody shares something like that. That's the other thing I love about it is where you just found that was on social media. Somebody shared that and you're able to experience something that someone put together. I just saw something on CBC about an Indigenous journalist interviewing an Indigenous artist about how he was growing up, his neighborhood in Winnipeg. He included it into his art. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was just a phenomenal interview. Now, I only found it because I followed this journalist, and I never would have found that otherwise. So that part's awesome. But the part where I have to come out and comment and like brand and think about, I feel like, no, I shouldn't have to go out and tell everybody.
But then how'd you know? If
But
you don't tell everyone, then
I know,
it didn't
but
happen.
that's what happens is everyone's like, "Oh, how come Mike's so quiet about this? Why, is he scared? Is it what?" And then you feel like, okay, now I'm forced to. If I get into a habit of this, I'm gonna have to like justify a position on like 100 different issues. No, I can't be doing that. My life has to speak. My relationships have to speak. I can't just be out there constantly trying to keep ahead and making sure I say, "Oh, by the way." But then I don't know what to do with that because when it comes to, like, say, this issue, no, I don't think a lot of necessarily my church are involved in social media, and I don't want to say we all should be either. I don't believe that for a second. But there could be the question, and so, of course, when the George Floyd thing happened, we came out a couple of different ways and said, here, this is what we feel about racism, just so in case anyone was wondering. In case there was a mystery or a thought that, what is it that we believe? This is what we believe. So we came out and said that. So there are times you have to sort of
Say something.
put a sign out or kind of make sure that you're speaking into it. But I remember when I was growing up, there was this illusion about a kind of a preacher who has an opinion about everything that I really avoid. Like, I don't want to be that person who's like,
speak to it.
Oh, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And then you have like a whole 10 reasons why this is the way you should think about this issue. And it gets way past the core tenets of the gospel or what the scriptures teach and gets into lots of very debatable, controversial things. And it's just like you're sounding smart or, I feel like that's not my place. I don't want to become that person because I think it then waters down what the core things. I want to keep making sure that the core things are clear. But, man, I feel like it's here to stay. But, here's the other issue. Not everybody's good at it. right? Like you can
What
give
be
like
good. What does that even mean?
Well, okay.
How can you be bad at it? Like that's the thing.
You
You talk about
totally
bad,
could be.
but there's no rules or regulations on how to use social media. There is no manual
Yeah.
that tells you, hey, if you're gonna tweet, do this. If you're gonna do this, do that. There are ways to use it properly when it comes to the hashtag piece, but when it comes to the content, like that being said, there has been a few instances where some content has been taken down by some providers. I know that during election season that there has been conversation about, fact checking. I think that Facebook has instituted recently within the past month or two where, sometimes you get these posts where it's like, alarmist, oh, this is not the way it seems, or here's the truth about whatever government. And then sometimes Facebook will actually say, here's a fact check on this. Actually, here's the true story. So people are aware or informed. But Facebook is a different one because it's usually based on the person who posts it that tells you something about where that person stands.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to know on a social aspect where someone stands on, say Justin Trudeau in Canada and Trump in the US. It's because they post sort of all the same thing. So it gives you freedom on social.
Yeah.
To post whatever you want about what you think. And this is what I think is happening. And there you post it, there it is.
Okay, all right. So this is what I mean by not being good at it. I'm getting at it from a different angle. When it comes to moving to a new place, the idea of being able to shift a perspective, if people just sort of amplify and shout and either cheer on or join a team about their opinions. Usually they're looking to justify what's their inner reaction, their gut reaction already. The problem is that I don't think it's as helpful to move people to a new place as people think it is. I think it actually causes a lot of people to get entrenched. So they don't get to experience what I think the aspect of communication that happens in relationship where you've got room to speak to one another and maybe you say something dumb, but that was all sitting there and the person who's talking it through with you knows you said something dumb, but is like, hey, let's explore that a little bit. As opposed to, if I would do that on Twitter, it's like I'll just get jumped on, right? Everyone will be like, wow, you said the wrong thing. This proves you're this. You really like it. So there's no relationship. There's only condemnation. You invite condemnation, but I don't think that a person can change without voicing some of their experience or the reasons why they think that way, even if they're all wrong. If they can find a place where they're treated with enough dignity, enough respect to bring it out, and then the people say, wow, let's examine that. The person there's a real potential that a person can change their perspective.
So is social media made to move people to a new place? I would say, I'll answer my own question since I have a thought on that, okay? When I am made aware of something on social media through any of, Twitter or Instagram it usually has to be a factual thing. Like that I can actually fact check and say, oh, that's...
Again, you sound like you're the
That's
most noble social media
why do you
user
talk like I'm
ever.
noble? That's all I'm trying to say.
Sir Dalton.
Listen, stop.
It's your new nickname. Sir Dalton.
Such a loser, Mike. Listen, all I'm saying is that for me, that's how I'm able to move to a new place. It's sometimes it's like I didn't know that happened, for example, right? When I see a tweet about whatever, I was like, oh shoot, I didn't know about that. Let me sort of either follow the thread or see if there's any news briefings that can corroborate it. And then I go to it and I'm like, okay, so for me, that's the only way social media can be used properly. If there was a proper way to do it, you have to take the time to find something that either corroborates it or counters it, because you can't just take, and the thing about, and I've seen someone do this on Facebook actually, where they take an image of some random person and they add some quote that isn't even theirs. And the bottom it's like, oh, they'll say, a virtue is a wonderful thing. And it's like Mark Twain. It's some picture in black and white. And it's like, actually, this guy's name's Jeffrey whatever. And he's my neighbor. Like, don't believe everything.
I think my favorite is don't believe everything you see on the internet, and it's Abraham Lincoln.
I saw that, and it was a picture of Prince.
Yeah.
It's not a place. I don't think it's a place that's conducive for the type of movement that you're talking about. I don't think it's conducive for that. I think, based on this conversation, what I've seen is that it does create an entrenchment. I have a belief, and all social media does is connect me to people who believe the same thing that I believe.
Yeah.
Algorithms do that too. I remember when I had Instagram, first off, Instagram used to give you all sorts of different imagery, right? They'd give you like nature, they would give you sports, they'd give you like they just give you this huge plethora. But then all they do is they say, well, you look at these things.
Yeah.
So like I look at like newsy things every now and then, or because I'm so noble, or I look at like sports things. And now when I go to my feed, that's all they give me.
Yeah.
So I don't even get it. Even if I wanted to move, I wouldn't even know where to start to get there.
It's true. Yeah.
So they're not helping the situation with the algorithm thing,
So
right?
you have to. So this is a good takeaway principle on social media. You have to be really intentional, because you're being steered somewhere on social
Absolutely.
media.
Absolutely.
And people don't realize. They think that they're free, and there is some freedom, but you're being steered way more than you think. And I remember learning, because my dad grew up studying like Marshall McLuhan, and that was all the rage. And he was at Carleton here at journalism and that kind of thing.
Is it Christian?
Marshall McLuhan, I think he was Catholic.
Catholic?
Yeah. But he wrote amazing things. He's the guy who came up with Medium as the message. And then a guy who came after him is Neil Postman, who wrote an amazing book that should
Amusing Ourselves to Death.
be required reading for everyone.
I
Even though
agree.
TV, I mean, if my kids read Amusing Ourselves to Death, they'll be like, oh yeah, TV. But it's that's the principle that each medium has its good things. He compares print culture, newspapers to television, and the drawbacks. And I think so that it's a whole nother layer. And I don't know who's writing the best stuff about this now. I am curious. I wonder if there's the new Neil Postman who's writing it and carrying on that tradition. But the thing that they're saying isn't to say to run away from it. They're saying you have to be so aware of what the limit, like where is this? This is actually doing something to you before, just by participating in it. You're not as free as you think you are. And there's people choosing for you so many things to keep you coming back, because ultimately they need to make money, or and to make the matters worse, if it was just advertising and Facebook and Twitter and all those kind of things, that's 80% of it. I don't know what the percentage is, but that's a ton of it, and that's happening to me. There's also people who have actually like truly nefarious purposes to get you to vote one way or the other,
Right.
from other countries, from other agencies, destabilizing forces, and all of that. I think you're right, and I think people they need to go in with eyes wide open, and I feel like if we could somehow, the only thing that I could say is not to run away from it, but if we could correctly rank other mediums, so we could say,
And who would be in charge of that?
if we could say this is okay, but
Who
there's
says it, though?
there's a
Who
better
says
way to work your way through this issue than to just read about it on Twitter.
But who's
Because
the
people,
boss? Who's the CEO?
This is what's happening: is people think that they're becoming smarter or wiser or more informed by going back onto but actually a lot of it is a lot emotional, fanning into flames anger towards one position,
Confirmation bias.
Yeah,
That's all it ends up being at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
It gives you what you've already read.
Yeah.
So if you already think that, COVID's a big hoax, for example, and you're doing that on social media, they're going to ply you with that if that's what you're looking for. They're not going to give you a counter argument to it, because if you go to counter argument to it, then you might not stick around. They're just trying to keep you saturated with what you want to hear. So discourse like this, you have to look very hard to find it. And like I said before, the people who own some of these mediums, I'm thinking specifically Twitter, certain people who have Twitter accounts, they will say in their bios, this is a place for discourse. So if I post something that you don't like, come at me correctly. Don't yell, or else I'll just delete you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand for it. But again, it has to be explicit, because if it's not, it ends up just being like a big
It's
fire.
like Twitter is training people to be fundamentalists. And
Ooh.
I remember my favorite definition of a fundamentalist on anything, any issue, not just theological, any issue, is well, actually, he was talking about religion. Actually, this was in my
Trying to
Bible
get away
college.
from it.
But he said, not much fun, too much damn, and not enough mental. So the idea is that they're very, very, a fundamentalist, and you could apply this now to all kinds of different segments of our political world or religious world, is that everything's super serious. Anything out of line isn't. You better attack it. The other thing is you're quick to condemn, and not enough mental. You're not going to consider where this other person is coming from. There's no listening posture. It's no, my mind is made up, and now I'm just going to find new ways to destroy the other position. And that mindset, it doesn't allow the dignity that we see. And of course, as a Christian, it shouldn't be. It doesn't mean that we don't have fundamentals. Everyone has to choose the basis for which they're going to build their lives. Mm-hmm. Those would be their fundamentals. There's nothing wrong with that word. But it's when you say anyone who's building on any other foundation, I have to attack. I have to control them. I have to minimize them, demonize them, marginalize them. And Twitter gives ample room for that kind of thinking. And unfortunately, it's like Twitter could go positive, social media could go positive, or it could go negative. It seems like the negative wins. There's more of that kind of thinking.
But we need it, though. Like I need to see that stuff that's happening, man. Because again,
I'm not even disagreeing with you.
I cannot rely on the regular fare of news to give me what's going on, because there still has been, shootings and deaths of blacks by law enforcement that have happened since George Floyd, and I never would have seen that, because during the time it was all about this one big thing that people were pushing. So it's like I need it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's you take the good with the bad, I guess.
Well, and that's it. It's like there's something about, if you could give, like if you're raising, if one of your cousins or nephews, someone who's younger in your family, and they're just signing up, and they sit down with you and they say, Uncle Dalton or Cousin Dalton.
No one ever calls me Cousin Dalton.
I don't know. What would they call you? Just
Dalton?
Sir Dalton, because of your nobility. They would say, how should I use this Twitter account? You have any suggestions for me?
Come on.
Like, don't you wish there was like a chapter, somewhere, an article that just says, here, the world's going to be in flames, but here's a wise way to use this medium so that you can get the benefits without getting getting attacked by the wolves or becoming one of the wolves.
It depends, man. Like, often people become what they become on Twitter or on any social media by experience. So, I can tell my young cousin to do this, but then all of my young cousin's friends in high school or whatever, they all have phones and they're all checking, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. And it happens in battle, quote unquote, I guess, like on the front lines to say that, right? That's when it happens. So if I've become now the wiseacre or the wise sage about Twitter, about social media, and that they come back to me, I just remind them, like, not everything's as it's sold out there, man. Like, you might see it one way, but I'm telling you, did you think about it this way? Do you think about it that way? And at least give them the opportunity to seek out another perspective of the story, right? There was a worldview book called Naming the Elephant. You ever heard that analogy where there's, people who are around an elephant, they're blind, right?
Yeah.
One's in the front. What's the elephant like? It's sharp and strong. Someone's at the rear. It smells terrible and it keeps hitting me in the face, right?
Yeah.
There's different perspectives. So I can at least, if I can let my cousin know that that's what's up, like you're seeing one thing try your best to get the whole picture, then I could say I'd win.
Yeah.
But if they're stuck and they decide that this is the way I'm going to see it and nothing's going to move me, what can I do?
Yeah.
Their mind's made up. I can't change them. So Twitter, again, it's Twitter's like it puts you in a place and it keeps like algorithms and whatever, social media, it keeps you in the place that you want to be in.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate individualism that's happening out there on social media.
What if it ends up being a tool? I mean, there's, I don't know, it's like Frankenstein's monster or how many science fiction stories, but what if it ends up being a tool that undoes us? Like it turns us back into mobs instead of people who used to reason with one another. Like what if our high point of public discourse is already passed? It's like a year we didn't even realize, and it's just downhill. And in the midst of the downhill thing, there's going to be some really good positive bits too, some revelations, but we end up destroying one another. And when you have major world leaders using Twitter and and it changes nations and starts wars and wow.
Then
I don't know.
God help us, man.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
That's it.
But then, then into it, we want to step in as, at least I do. I think you do too. Where we want to step in as agents of grace. So, if we step in, and our own lives are being shaped, if we can somehow, even if you're just 1 in a million or 1 in 1,000, that's not going to quickly condemn, that sticks up for someone who's being bullied and marginalized, without destroying someone else in return, as though that's the only way to do it. Like, I have come across sometimes some pretty outstanding, kind words that sort of create a buffer. So it's like the mob's coming for somebody, and someone puts out a point that sort of like tries to deflect the venom that's coming.
We're in an era of cancel culture.
Yeah, that's just it.
And there was an article put out, I think about a month ago. And these are like heavyweight writers. So like Salman Rushdie, Margaret Atwood, Malcolm Gladwell. Have you read it?
Yeah, I haven't read the letter. I read about it.
Read the letter, please. And it's talking about America specifically, talking about some of the things that people in leadership have done that were negative, and talking about the paragraph was saying, now we're doing these things where we're discrediting, an accomplished author because of improprieties. We're doing all these different things, and how that, just like what you said, like it's putting us back to a time when who now can speak.
Yeah.
And I can certainly say, social media has helped perpetuate that. I'm not, as much as I love it, like that's the truth. I mean, without social media, then it wouldn't be in this place. But it's also an era, they talk about it as a post-truth era as well, and an era where whatever I think is, and that's it, and that's always a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Even with regards to race as well, because when you talk about movement, you talk about getting to a new place, right?
Yeah.
Like that means you have to move.
Yeah.
Right? But if you've solidified yourself in your beliefs about whoever, law, blacks, women, whatever you want to say, Jesus, like if you've planted yourself in one place, you're not going anywhere if that's what you've decided. So if you're actually looking for what you're talking about, a higher understanding, it's understanding everything around you more so, and to be able to take even your views open-handed and say, you know what? Like I'm after truth right now. I'm not necessarily, and that's hard, and it's a hard thing to do because I even see it on social media, on Facebook. People have solidified themselves, and it's hard for people to say, I'm willing to put things that I believe my whole life out like this. And it's funny because people who do this and their lives change, they say, I am so thankful I let that go.
Yeah. social media doesn't give you a chance to appreciate the nuance and the complexity in things. It generalizes with a very broad brush. But if we're in it, maybe there comes a time where you do say, you come to a certain point and you say, I need to turn it off.
And people do that all the
I'm just
time.
going to drop right out.
People do that all the time. They take, now it's like a wellness act or like a wellness like idea. Please shut off your social media because you're taking. It's like what? Like if I'm doing something in a place,
stuff
probably.
On this, right?
But if I'm in a place where I'm trying to move to a new place and it's good, why would I want to turn it off? Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're watching a good movie, you're not going to be like, I'm going to take a break now. So there's obviously something wrong.
And I think there's chemical hits you're getting by either being outraged or having your position entrenched.
I
you're
can't
getting
even talk to that man.
Emotional hits.
I don't know anything about that.
No, that's right. Because you're Sir Dalton.
Well, now you're bringing that up for the conversation that we had last time. I'll take the riots for a perfect example, actually.
Okay.
Talking about the two sides, right? One side says, it's all peaceful. The other side says they're all rioters.
Yeah.
Right? That's actually probably the best thing I can think of off the top. And when you look at the picture holistically, it's all going on.
Yeah.
There are peaceful protests going on. There are things burning right now.
Yeah.
So you need to ask the question, well, why? Why on both sides?
Yeah.
Why is there peaceful protests going on? What are they protesting about?
Yeah.
Why are they burning things down? Who's burning things down?
Yeah.
What is the rationale? But it's not like that. Like
social media isn't
draws
going to
the
help
line.
you. It's
not
not going to
gonna
help you there.
you find the answer, find the truth. Nuance. Social media doesn't allow for that. It doesn't give you a place to appreciate the full circle. It tells you, make a decision, take a side. Either these people who are out there protesting are animals, these people who are protesting are walking the streets in peace. Law enforcement, same deal.
Yeah.
Who's cracking down first? Who made the first hit? No. And you can find enough articles that will tell you about every single one that you feel like you're satisfied.
Yeah.
So you have to have a pretty high level of discernment. But even to talk like that, not everyone who takes in social media even thinks of it in that case. They just think of it as input information within that's going to somehow make you better. Yeah. So I think for the Christian, or for the one who wants to be above it, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You can't just intake it and open your mouth and just gorge on it, thinking that it's going to make you better.
I think you need another clear point of reference to come in with and hold on to so that you can understand where you are. Otherwise, you just get tossed around. You need something to give you a mooring, and you need other sources that aren't social media to infuse what's most important, so that you have those first principles built into your life.
And we've taken in a lot from social media, and maybe the real question is, are we built to take in so much, right? Because people do get fatigued. Yeah, I do too by what I see, and are we supposed to physiologically intake so much information? And again, social media is just as bad as the news. I mean, in that Neil Postman book, he talks about in an hour news cycle, you hear about sports, weather, death, special news interest in an hour. Yeah. And you're like, hold on a second. You brushed upon my happiness, my sadness, my joy, my grief, my anger. How much quicker is it in social media? Yeah. It's 10 times worse. Yeah. You scroll on your Twitter feed or even on your Instagram feed or Facebook, you'll see a story about a killing, you'll see a picture of a sloth, you'll see a picture of, sports figure happening. You'll see all these different things, and it's like your body doesn't even have time to react to all of it because it's all so much in one. Yeah.
So I think that talking about the medium is as important as in order for us to if we're going to make real headway when it comes to ethnicity and race and talking about those things, we need other forums. This forum might have a few uses, but in advancing, we're going to need other forums. And I think maybe talk about this another time, but what are the tools so that people can actually, someone actually came to me after our congregation did some testimonies or stories that people shared about their experience as a Black in our congregation. We shared them at and they just shared some stories. And someone in the congregation, I was visiting with them for some other reason, and they said, that story that one of them shared just really touched me. What do I do? I want to talk to them about it, but I don't know how to bring it up. And it was like, I think that was the beginning of something really positive, right? Like they're on the brink there of just doing what you and I did, where we pick up the phone and go, what do you think of this? Like, how are you feeling? And the conversation unfolds. And that's all that they needed, their own organic, real connecting point relationship. And that's more real. And neither of these two people, as far as I know, are heavy into Twitter, but they could be finding a brand new, hearing points of view that are going to end up strengthening them and encouraging them and listening in brand new ways.